Even if Bitcoin goes to 10,000, is that, I mean, it's only $6,000 lower than now, 6, 7,000. Remember, we were at 69,000 and we're at 16 now. So, it's kind of splitting hairs at this point to say, it's another $6,000, $7,000. And then you have a verifiable maybe bottom in the crypto markets where the rising from the ashes will have big money, assuming we get regulation. And I think it, again, becomes one of the best buying opportunities for an asset that you could ever hope for. So I know that sounds crazy, but I'm kind of expecting. Weirdly enough, this is exactly what happens consistently in every nasty bear market, right? So during bull markets, it's easy to hide shady behavior. And Absolutely. So people do things like that. I mean, you go to Enron, WorldCom in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, and those were publicly traded companies, by the way, that were doing really shady things. And then, it makes sense that when you have so much money in the system and crypto just going nuts, they're going to be bad actors, right? And they're going to do shady things. But uncovering them, rooting them out, pulling them out of the system, it actually is the healthiest thing we could have going on. So, again, it's always good to look at it on a positive note. And I think that's the positive note, is that we get rid of all of this, then there's the trust can return. We need a little transparency. We need a little regulation. And then what you're going to see is more people adopt cryptocurrency, even more so than it is now. You have so many of these crypto companies from the Bahamas, from different areas, and you have to have some sort of cross-border coordination so that, things get flushed out easier. There's communication, there's assistance between regulators. And I think, again, that's a super positive thing where you're going to have this, no one wants to look bad. And right now you have the Bahamas looking bad. People are pissed off. They're, and obviously the Bahamas doesn't want to get that reputation of, you got to get to this point where I'm not sure what the regulation will be, but I think that you have to have a certain amount of disclosures that any cryptocurrency exchange has to do, or any cryptocurrency, much like, weirdly enough, like publicly traded companies, right? They have to be audited every quarter. They have to release their financials, like where is all their money? Where are they putting their money? Like all of those things in a weird way would kind of be nice for us as investors to know. Right? I mean, we're not looking for I don't want bad regulation, which is always the risk, right? When you're dealing with government, do they over-regulate? But at the same time, I'm a big believer that, the best projects are going to survive and thrive no matter what, right? Yeah, the crappy ones or the medium ones, they may fail, but honestly, that's part of kind of the whole system. And if you go back to the dot-com era with the bubble in the dot-coms in the late 90s, this same sort of thing happened, right? It's super... You don't want to say normal because it sucks that anyone's losing money in a normal kind of correction or bear market, but it's very common that in these periods, this is what happens, and this is how it's remedied. I do think that it's going to draw in more, especially when you get the regulation, right? Because the fact of the matter is there's money to be made, and anything that's new, where there's money, when there's profits to be made, you're going to have these regular brokers that are mostly doing stocks, bonds, commodities. They're going to say, well, listen, we have the whole setup for are, trading already. What's the difference between it's only going to cost us X amount of dollars, very small amount, to branch into crypto, right? And so I think that's a very natural way to go. And the positive is for retail investors, right? There's a positive, which is that the more participants in a market that you have, like in terms of an exchange, the lower fees are going to go. Yeah, I mean, I think it's in the right zone, right? I'm not sure if I trust it fully yet. Mm-hmm. I want to see that kind of like, okay, what's the standardized audited proof of reserves kind of thing? But it's definitely in the right track. And what they're really doing is, like, Binance did this, I think, recently and so forth. But it's about regaining trust and trying to calm the crypto markets, right? Because all these other exchanges, whether they're doing things that they shouldn't be or they aren't, people are getting nervous. We know there's a massive amount of people pulling off crypto from the exchanges and into cold storage and stuff like that. So you have that aspect, and they don't want to lose that money, right? They need it left on those exchanges. Therefore, people are trading more. They can make money and so forth. So I think the bottom line is that it's a step in the right direction, but it's not where it needs to be. There's no doubt it has to be even more transparent.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see more transparency. I believe even, I think it was someone from Tether that was talking about it on CNBC last week, and he was saying that he wishes even within that there was more transparency, that even he wished he knew more of what was going on within his own project. So, there's people that just are blindly working. And I think people do that within the traditional financial system as well. People are just blindly going with everything and just not questioning anything. I'm just going to do my job and then leave. What do you see for, cryptocurrency exchanges in the future? Because obviously a lot of them got wiped out. People are trying to rebuild. Do you think that we're going to see a change in how exchanges even operate in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will have to be new rules that they abide by. But in terms of letting people, put money on them and buy and sell crypto, I think that'll generally remain the same, just because for now decades, that's how it's been in the stock market, right? And where commodities are is you put your money in an account, you buy and sell. I think one of the most important things for crypto is that you need that government regulation, which then will be what's called the FDIC insurance. If I have $250,000 in a stock market account, and if someone steals that money, it's actually insured and I'll get it back, right? That you got to step up that side of things. That FDIC insurance would be huge to have in the crypto markets. And I think that's going to be part of the regulation, which is actually a positive part. You have to understand that a lot of the people in crypto right now are so young. And again, I'm not super old myself, but they haven't been through a lot of the trials and tribulations of holding big investments or managing big companies. And so when you have this kind of almost overnight instant success where your company's valued at, $30 billion, let's say, you tend to not take the precautions, partially because we're young. When I was young, and again, you're very young, like you're more likely to jump out of an airplane, you're more likely to do there's these things. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that there's this kind of invincibility, which is like, well, let me just take all the risk I want because, I'm sure it'll be okay, and they haven't experienced this. And I think that's part of it. And then the other side of the coin is that, some of the things that it seems like he was doing with Alameda or whatever it's called, I mean, it was definitely on the shady side. So he must have known that he shouldn't be doing that. And I think he needs to be punished. Honestly, you can't let stuff like this fly and then not have a repercussion for it. So, I mean, at this point, you're right. All he should be saying is, I'm sorry I messed up and, I'll do my best to make it right. Because I don't think at this point there's much else to say, right? I mean, how do you justify doing some of the things that he was doing? So it's a mess. And I just hope that, if anything good comes from it in terms of good, solid regulation, and maybe hopefully this doesn't happen again. My biggest concern in the crypto markets is that you have other companies that were holding FTX tokens or they were holding other stuff, and now they're having to file for bankruptcy or they're getting close to that, which can kind of be a chain reaction in the industry. As I say, it's kind of like the beginning of the end of the down move in crypto. And one of the cool things to recognize here is if you look at the collapse that occurred with Terra Luna, right? So we were trading around 31,000 when Terra Luna the collapse occurred, and we went down to about 17.5. I think that was about a 40+% drop in Bitcoin during that period. And what's kind of cool is that if you look at the percentage drop here when FTX, filed essentially and collapsed, it's only about a 25% decline. And you could argue that the decline, that the FTX situation is way worse in terms of the ripple effects in the crypto industry. And in theory, it should have done at least 40% to Bitcoin, maybe more, because of the negative impact and the size of it. So I would just say that, if you're looking for the positives within the crypto charts, this would be one of them. The size of this collapse is now basically half. So Bitcoin only lost half of what it lost during Terra Luna percentage wise, even though you could argue that FTX was even worse than Terra Luna. So that's a nice little positive that I think we should just kind of pay attention to. I still think Bitcoin's not quite at a bottom, but it's absolutely getting there. I think what it is it's the market beginning to adapt, right? So a lot of people following Terra Luna that were already nervous about more kind of issues, they already exited in that drop and they just kind of said, okay. And now you have a scenario where people are kind of like, okay, we're kind of expecting these bad headlines. Let's instead not freak out and just dump and panic, but maybe we just hold still. We hold our crypto right now and we kind of wait this out, or maybe we even buy. In fact, I read an intriguing story the last couple of days, which was basically saying that the amount of people buying, the amount of small investors that hold 1 Bitcoin or less, you actually had the most buying in the last month that you've seen since the all-time highs in crypto. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
So it tells you actually small investors are actually accumulating here. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think FTX might be the big one, meaning that that's the big earthquake. But one of the things that's kind of intriguing is that if you go back to the Lehman Brothers, and Lehman Brothers was a massive bank in 2008 that collapsed, and it basically went out of business and everything. It was essentially the FTX of the banking sector in 08. And basically when that happened, there was a ton of panic. The market still fell another 40% or so from that point over the next 6 months. And so for me, I say, okay, well, if FTX is the Lehman moment for the crypto markets, you basically have a window over the next 4 to 5 months 5 to 6 months for a bottom. And then Bitcoin from where that started probably goes down about 40-50%, which kind of puts us just below 10,000. And even if Bitcoin goes to 10,000, it's only $6,000 lower than now, 7,000. Remember, we were at 69,000 and we're at 16 now. So, it's kind of splitting hairs at this point to say, it's another $6,000-7,000. And then you have a verifiable maybe bottom in the crypto markets where that the rising from the ashes will have big money, assuming we get regulation. And I think it, again, becomes one of the best buying opportunities for an asset that you could ever hope for. So I know that sounds crazy, but I'm kind of expecting more downside. Again, but it's minimal. Like for me, I'm already starting to nibble on a hodl position, right?
Yeah.
So even though I expect it to go down, what if it doesn't? So, all right, so I'll pick up a 1/6 position in this range here. In fact, it was a little over 17,000 where I accumulated a little bit. If it goes below 15, I'll buy a little bit more. If it goes below 12, I'll buy a little bit more. Below 10, I'll buy some more. Basically just starting to kind of dip the toes in the water, not really caring if you're getting in down here, if what's 7,000 if it's going to go up 100,000 kind of thing. And let's say that's the bottom. Let's say I'm wrong and at the bottom is 15. At least if it goes to 100, I have some investment in it versus being like, oh, darn, I was being a stickler. I was going to wait till 9,000 and it never got there, right? So you have to weigh the pros and the cons. And I think you have to be, if you're getting into crypto, you have to be ready for a wild ride, right? You can't get in and be like, oh, this is going to be no stress. And it's going to be wild. So only invest money that you kind of are ready to deal with that kind of volatility. But again, I think this makes sense to kind of slowly start inching into.